Live, and now we are live here. Hey everybody, I've been waiting all week to say hello. Hello from the Connecticut River Delta. Lots to talk about, especially your questions, but I can't wait to share some other stuff with you, including the fact that if your picture looks a little bit better this week, I've changed my camera situation. If the sound is a little bit better, I've changed my microphone situation, some upgrades here in Studio C. So I hope that you might notice a tiny, if you don't notice it, that's fine. But you might notice a few differences here. I have you guys are my guinea pigs here, the first 60 seconds here of the live stream. I can up the volume a little bit. But I worry that if I up the volume too much, it'll distort a little bit. So let me know in the chat if you need extra volume. Hopefully this volume is pretty much what you've come to expect. You crank the volume too much and then you get some distorted sounds, especially with the guitar. Put some new strings on my guitar. And so, hey, that might sound extra good. I stretched them out. Oh, so here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about stretching your strings, a crucial part of your restringing process. We're going to talk about stretching your strings. We're going to talk about a cool device from the D'Addario/Planet Waves company that I can't wait to show you. And it ties in with something we talked about last time. We talked about straps, and this is part of the whole strap shopping experience. I can't wait to tell you about that. I have a bunch of books to show you, including the one book you should never buy. How's that for a teaser? The one book you should never buy. I'm going to show you that book. I did not buy it. I think I got it when I bought a whole bunch of used stuff, and it came as part of the deal. So I will show you a bunch of books you should buy, and the one book you should never buy. How's that? Okay. I can't wait to tell you about... I shared some experiences with you last time, times where I felt like I was paying my dues as a guitar teacher. And this week I will share with you sort of my favorite questions. They are non-musical questions, sort of. Anyways, I will share with you, after 31 years of teaching the guitar, I have a few questions that stand out in my mind. I can't wait to share those questions with you. And a little reminder about my travels, my family and I going to Maine, and a little reminder about where you can find me. I'm going to stop by a couple of music stores in Maine and southern New Hampshire, and I want to update or give you a reminder about where you can find me in the future, the first week of August. So who do we see here? Stephen, hello. Booba John, hello. Harmonica and guitar progress, hello. Jeffrey, hello. I see lots of cool emojis. North Country Fisher, hello. North Country Fisher, it might have been you. Someone asked me a question that I never got around to. I saw it later. It was about finding your voice on the guitar. Who was that? And I want to talk about that a little bit today. Hey, David, finding your voice on the guitar. What does that even mean, right? But I've given it some thought. So whoever asked me that question, I hope that person is still around. In fact, I don't have a pencil. That's okay. Oh, I do. Okay. I'm going to write on my list of things here, voice. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I have a baseball metaphor for you as well. A baseball metaphor and a baseball story. How do you talk for 2 hours and not, bring baseball into it, right? How is that even possible, especially here in the U.S.? So lots to share with you today, including, oh my gosh, I can't believe I haven't shared this with you already. Okay, are you sitting down? A week or two ago, someone asked, have I ever had a student who went on to be famous? And I can't believe, how could I forget? And I have video proof of a student who, was just recently with John Mellencamp. Yeah, that John Mellencamp. So wait, it's not even what you think. So stick around, because I'm going to share with you a YouTube link of my student with John Mellencamp. And I can't wait. I can't believe it didn't occur to me. So lots to stick around for, so don't go anywhere, everybody. Let's see. Harmonica and guitar progress. It was it was you who asked. No, who asked about finding your voice? Hey, Laura from Italy. Hello, welcome, Laura. You are up late, I imagine, right? All right, get that espresso going. But thanks for being here, Laura from Italy. Beginner Guitar. Hey, John. Thanks for joining us. Beginner Guitar is our moderator, keeping you guys PG-13, maybe even G. So let's get right into a question, and then I will get into the things I've been teasing you guys with, everything from the baseball metaphor to my student on stage with John Mellencamp, lots of stuff. Okay, so okay, harmonica and guitar progress brings up a great point. And don't forget, everybody, when you do ask a question, I hope you do put a few question marks in advance of your question, so I know it's a question aimed at me. Okay, harmonica and guitar progress. First question up on the big board: does anyone use the electric guitar to play unplugged for practice? This is how I started. I'm doing it again. There's a lot of practical reasons, right? You keep your house quiet. You just play your electric guitar unplugged. So let's talk about why it's a great idea. Convenience, right? Number one, hopefully don't bother your household. Number two, you don't have to plug it in. Just grab your guitar and get in even just 5 minutes of practice. Very convenient, right? Why not? Anytime you can grab the guitar and get 5 minutes of something, awesome. And of course, if you play for 20 minutes, great. Number one drawback of doing that, you lose track of what it means to play an electric guitar with electric guitar volume cranked up through an amplifier, which is significant. For example, you may play with a heavier touch because you're producing the sound acoustically, so to speak, and that's totally unnecessary when you're playing amplified. So that's the drawback. Your touch is a little bit different. There's something to think about. So if it's a matter of either not practicing or being unplugged is awesome. That's great. If there's other reasons, make sure you get in some practice time with the amplifier, especially, presumably you paid a few bucks for the amplifier, want to crank it up and use it. Compromise, of course, would be one of those cool semi-hollow electric guitars. A lot of people call those the B.B. King guitars, right? I don't have my Gold Starfire here today, but that's an electric guitar. But because it's hollow, right, you can hear it a little bit better. But even in that case, though, I still recommend, if your aspirations are to play an electric guitar plugged in public, the more you experience that sensitivity and that sound, the better. But you'll hear me repeat this many times. Do whatever it takes to get in those few minutes of practice time, whatever it takes, Okay, Laura from Italy. It is nearly midnight in Italy. Holy cow. All right. You are paying your dues. Audiophile Man, welcome. Who else is here? Audiophile Man. Let's see. The question is, would Lightning Hopkins blues guitar style be difficult to learn how to play? I'm not a Lightning Hopkins expert. I have a number of books that cover so many different, blues greats like Lightning Hopkins. So I can't give you an answer. I can't just say, oh yeah, man, I went to school at Lightning Hopkins and I had his style down in a month or something like that. I'm sorry, I can't do that. Walking in anyone's footsteps with all the idiosyncrasies, whoever it is, that can be tricky, whoever it is. But you know what though? I wouldn't mind doing a little research and getting back to you, Audiophile Man, about that, because like I said, I have so many blues books that including ones that cover his style, and I want to give you a great answer. I've never heard anyone say it's impossible to play like Lightning Hopkins, So I'm sorry, I'm not giving you a straight answer, but I'm gonna make a mental note, and when I timestamp this video, which I do, in the coming days, I'll be reminded of this, and that'll remind me to go grab my Lightning Hopkins lesson material. I don't think I ever did a video on any Lightning Hopkins tune, and maybe I should. So yeah. Okay, I'm reading through here. Hey, Cool Breeze Joe. Cool Breeze Joe says, I use my jazz guitar, which is mostly wood. Sounds good, then plug in later. Yeah. Yep, whatever it takes, to get in that practice time. Sounds good. Before I forget, super chat. Anybody who would like to contribute to the cause here, you can click on that $ button down at the bottom of the chat and make a contribution to the cause. I mentioned I got some new equipment, and any generous donation goes right to paying for that equipment. And anything beyond that goes to paying for my son's college. So I greatly appreciate it. Okay, so let's get into some of my agenda here today. Oh, by the way, I'm not hearing that anyone needs more volume, so I'm going to keep the volume of my mic just like it is, and it works for me. Supposedly, this mic is being boosted a little bit with a vintage preamp sound. So if my voice sounds especially vintage, that's why. Or if the guitar sounds especially good, could be why. Okay, let's get down to it. I'm going to do a little show and tell. I think this is the coolest thing. Do I work for D'Addario? No. I just like D'Addario a lot. I think it's a cool company. And D'Addario owns multiple brands. Evans drum heads. I'm going to tell you more about this in a second. I believe during the pandemic, remember the pandemic? The Evans drum head company, owned by D'Addario, stopped making drum heads and started making masks and respiratory protection for medical workers and for all of us. So I just, it's pretty cool. Okay, so what do I have here, and why am I making a big deal about it? We talked about straps last time, and inevitably, some of you, we have 25, 24 people out there. Awesome. Some of you will have a strap button here, but you will not have one anywhere else. For example, on the side of the neck right there. It's, in my experience, it's actually rare that a guitar ships from the manufacturer with a second strap button. And if you have one, great. If a guitar came that way, great. But I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you, especially on acoustic guitars, electric is different, if you don't have any other strap button. One of the solutions, one of them, is this beautiful device right here. Okay, so how does it work? By the way, this is called the D'Addario / Planet Waves Acoustic Quick-Release. Okay, so basically you take any guitar strap, and whether you have a strap button or not, you don't have to use a strap button. One end of this loops through the hole in the end of your strap, and the other end of this loops right back here. I'm indicating behind the nut, past the first fret, past the nut, under the strings, right before you get to the tuning machines. It loops around, easy peasy. I'm no ego scout, but if I can do it, you can do it. And then the two pieces click together with a cute little clicky, what do you call that? Cute little clicky, let me see if I can take this apart here. There you go. A cute little clicky plastic clip. And then you have solved the problem of either not having a strap button, or maybe for whatever reason that strap doesn't hang right for you at that location, and you actually want it to go around the end of the neck. So such a cool device, not rocket science, but as soon as I saw it, I got a bunch from my music shop and began selling them. So that's one of my show and tells for today. By the way, a strap button, you can buy a strap button from any place. Amazon, of course. Usually they make you buy two, I believe, a package of two of them. So sorry. Stuart McDonald, also known as StuMac.com. I'm going to put StuMac in the chat here. They have every guitar part in the world. The only problem with StuMac is they really ding you on the shipping. Sometimes the shipping is more than the product. So you might want to make a little wish list and then go to stumac.com. Anyways, you can get strap buttons from them. Sweetwater, I imagine sweetwater.com also has strap buttons. And you can do it yourself. If I can do it, you can do it. And this might seem somehow counterintuitive to put the button under the neck. as opposed to up here, but it works great. It's how I was taught. And, you drill a little pilot hole with a thin little drill bit, not as deep as the actual screw is going to go, and not as thick as the actual screw. And then you just gently screw it in. Does not hurt the sound, does not hurt the value or anything. If I can do it, you can do it. So, okay. So that was my show and tell, following up on the discussion about straps we had last time. In case some of you missed it, my advice is get a strap. Consider using a strap even when you're sitting down. It just gives you that much more stability, and it's a fashion statement. You can get straps made out of anything that say anything, and why not? So I recommend straps in general, and it opens up the possibility of not only standing up and playing your guitar, but having it fall to the floor and get damaged, or just, bang it on the door frame as you walk around. The absolute number one way to damage your guitar is to stand up with your guitar. So proceed with caution. Okay, let's see who else is out there. Joseph, hello. I see your question, Joseph. I'm going to scroll down and get that question in a minute. I want to make sure I don't miss any previous questions. Scott Rhodes, welcome. Okay. Joseph. Okay. Yes, Joseph is asking a good question. Joseph, he says, that acoustic that Jonathan is holding looks identical to mine I've had for 40 years, but the brand is rubbed off the head. Can you tell me, is yours a Martin? Yes, I have a Martin guitar here. This is a Martin D size, dreadnought size guitar, a D16 that I got in 1991, but it was made in 1990, but I got it new. What makes it a D16? The 16 refers to the fact that while it is mahogany back and sides, just like a D18, it has a few other features that a D18 typically would not have. A tortoiseshell pickguard instead of plain old black, scalloped bracing on the inside, which in theory, lightens up the structure and allows the wood to vibrate more. And also, I believe, has what at the time Martin called a low profile neck. So maybe the neck was a tiny bit thinner. I didn't shop that hard. I was working in a guitar shop at the time. They had two of these, and long story short, I had been playing an old, very small Gibson acoustic that was very small, and it was a cool guitar. It had no real sustain to it. It just wasn't made for what this guitar is made for, which is that big boomy full sound. And I knew that was the sound I wanted. Do I miss that little Gibson? I don't miss it, but I would like to play it again and see, what I remember about it, see if I still think of it the same way. I had no regrets about letting it go, but it was a Gibson, I believe it was an LG1 from the 40s. And the banner underneath the name, it said, "Only a Gibson is good enough," which some other company in later years had an advertising campaign, like sort of anti-Gibson. And their campaign was, "When good enough isn't good enough," which is kind of clever. D16. I wonder why your guitar would have the name rubbed off the headstock. That you wouldn't do that with a Martin name. You do that with some other brand that you want to leave people in the dark about. I have concerns about that. Number one, though, how does the guitar sound? If it sounds great, that's all that matters. And if it's 40 years old, it probably does sound great, because in general, acoustic guitars, if they're made with solid wood, not laminate, but solid wood, they sound warmer and richer, for a good 20 years. At a certain point, they might reach their peak, but yeah. Okay, let's see who else we have here. Okay. Yeah, harmonica and guitar progress. I'm pretty sure it was a LG1. It was a sunburst finish, a very small body, and I understood it to be from the 40s, which I thought I'd just seen Willie Nelson in concert. This would have been 1987, probably the spring or early summer of 87. Yeah, that sounds about right. And from a distance, even from a distance, you could tell Willie Nelson was playing a cool old guitar. It was probably his famous trigger, nylon string trigger guitar. Those of you who aren't aware of Willie Nelson's famous guitar, I encourage you to Google it. And there's a lot going on with that guitar. And I thought, well, I got to get a cool old acoustic guitar. I had my Guild Starfire already. So I walked into a guitar shop in Boston, a small place, and I thought that was a pretty cool guitar. I think it was $400, if it rings a bell, $400. A lot of wear and tear, but I believe it was all original, which is pretty cool. I'm sure it had some repairs. I have this memory that it had a split in the center seam that had been repaired. So it's kind of a player's guitar, not a collectible kind of thing, but pretty cool guitar. I was a young guy, man. I lucked into some nice guitars. I was a young guy. Puma John just bought a D16 Martin with rosewood back and sides. Oh, cool. I'm surprised it's still called a D16 if it has rosewood back and sides. But I'm not up to date on Martin's stuff. So I don't doubt you for a minute. Audiophile man, I should have taken better care of my instruments. From a distance, it looks pretty good, right? From a distance. Let's go with that. If I knew then what I know now, I would have taken a bit better care of it. But this guitar survived. Some of you might remember this story. I had it in this nice plastic molded Martin case. It said Martin kind of embedded into the plastic of the case, And I was on one of those long segmented buses where, it was like two buses connected in the middle. And I thought it was really cool to rest my guitar right where I was sitting, right with a segmented part of the bus could bend, so to speak, could semi-rotate. And we went around a curve, and I watched as the guitar case got crunched by the two segments of the bus. Yeah. And I think I could see, I think it was a latch that popped or something happened. And I thought, what an idiot. And the guitar survived that, but the case did not. What was I thinking? Harmonica and Guitar Progress mentions that LG1 are ladder braced guitars. I've no doubt that you are correct about that. I know just enough about acoustic guitar construction to recognize names and phrases. I don't always know what the net result is. I know what my ear likes, So, okay, folks, I would love to hear some more questions, but I don't want to keep you in suspense anymore. I'm going to put in the chat video evidence of a student of mine on stage with John Mellencamp. I can't believe I didn't remember this story when someone asked me, did I ever have any students who went on to be famous? Well, I hope you like this. And let's put this in the chat here. Okay, this YouTube link is going in the chat. This is my student on stage just a few weeks ago with John Mellencamp. Now, I don't know if you can watch this video and watch me at the same time. If you can, or however you choose to watch this video link. This is the song Cherry Bomb from a few weeks or months ago. John Mellencamp at the Beacon Theater in New York City. And he called my student on stage. True story. You watch the video. You have to watch about 4 minutes into the song, maybe about 4 minutes in. Yeah, man. That's my student on stage with John Mellencamp. So I do have at least one student who has, got to the top of that mountain of fame, musical fame. Now, just in case you cannot watch that video and watch me at the same time, and you're choosing to watch me instead of watching that video, here is what you will see at approximately 4 minutes into that YouTube video clip. John Mellencamp probably had been noticing my student all night long, my student who loves John Mellencamp and who knows every word to every John Mellencamp song. My student is a completely adorable 6-year-old with red hair who was in about the 3rd row with his mom and dad. And John Mellencamp, you can see in the video, it's one of the last songs of the night. And John Mellencamp probably thought to himself, I got to get this young guy on stage. Gets my student Michael on stage, hands in the microphone, man. He sings his heart out. He sings Cherry Bomb. He and John Mellencamp are doing it as a duet together. And at a certain point, Mellencamp just hands him the mic and walks off because Michael knew the words, man. So there you go. Anything is possible, especially if you're 6 and cute. Now my student, he's actually a super musical kid. And if I could have picked any of my students, any of them, and got them up on stage with any performer, he would have been maybe my top pick. He takes guitar lessons, drum lessons, and piano lessons from me. He's got a great singing voice. In the video, his pitch is not as good as it is typically, and that it's possible that with the excitement of being on stage, although he comes across as a cool cucumber, but with the excitement of being on stage with John Mellencamp, it's possible that his usual really actually great singing voice and great sense of pitch was not ideal. Of course, it could be the monitors, man. Hey, his first time sing, with a monitor system at the Beacon Theater in front of hundreds and hundreds. I don't know how many people the Beacon holds, but a lot. So it's possible that despite his calm exterior, he might have been a little nervous. But yeah, an extremely musical kid, and probably not the last time he's going to be on a big stage. But he might not top that. Oh, and here's the kicker to the story, because there's always a punchline, right? I wouldn't tell a story if there wasn't a punchline. So the boy comes in with his mom, and they tell me about this. I found out from the family, in the days after it happened. And the boy and I are talking during the lesson, and we're talking about, wow, you got on stage, you went to New York City. We're in small town Connecticut, so to go into New York City is a big deal around here. It's a couple hours to get there, and I think they spent the weekend in New York City. And we're talking about what it's like to be on stage with John Mellencamp, and the punchline is, there's a lull in our conversation about being on stage with John Mellencamp. And the kid looks at me and goes, oh, also, we saw Lion King. Yeah, man. Because if you're 6, those are pretty equally awesome things. I said, you saw Lion King. Whoa, man. Great weekend. Great weekend. Yeah, so that's the punchline there. Okay. Let's see who we have here. Scott has a 00015 Martin. Yeah, man. Look, you took 8 months of lessons, and I'm guessing you upgraded from whatever you'd been playing to that Martin. Nice, man. Hopefully you kept, Scott, hopefully you kept your other guitar for lots of reasons. Among the non-sentimental reasons to keep every guitar you ever own is keep a guitar around for playing in alternate tunings, There's so much you can do. Actually, that's a nice segue. Good job, Jonathan. Thanks. Nice segue into one of the books I want to show you. So to have a second or third or fourth guitar, one of the many reasons to do that is it's fun to have a guitar in a different tuning so that you can reach over and either play a very specific song that you've been working on in that tuning, or just to explore and noodle around and have fun in another tuning. Which brings me to some books. Ready to see some books? Okay. I'm going to show you books that I recommend. And don't forget, stick around, my friends, all 38 of you, because I'm also going to talk to you about a book that you should never, ever, ever buy. Okay, we'll get to that. A cute little book. I think they used to call this type of book that I'm holding here a guitar case book or something, because it's what? It's about, what is that? 4 inches by 14 inches, cute little, it fits in your guitar case, right? And this particular book I'm holding here is The Alternate Tunings Guide for Guitar, written by Mark Hanson, Hanson, and published by Amsco Publications, AMSCO. If this is still in print, it may not be the Amsco company anymore. But, okay, the subtitle. This book introduces 8 of the most commonly used guitar tunings. If this book is not available, and if you can't even find a used copy of it anywhere, I'm sure there's similar things out there, because there should be. This goes back to 1991. Okay, so interestingly, he starts off with a handful of songs and information about playing in standard tuning, which, okay, that's kind of a, it's not what you bought the book for, right? But okay, we'll give him a pass for that. But then right away it gets into drop D tuning. Drop D is when you only loosen the fat E string down to D, and that's called drop D tuning. Now, what makes this book special, in my mind, is once it gets you into that tuning, and it gives you some different types of advice on how to get into that tuning. It shows you a bunch of common chords, how to play them in this new tuning, which is great. Chords, in like this case, D, E, F, G, A, C, some minors, some seventh chords. Remember, those are the big three flavors of chords, right, folks? For most of us playing conventional popular music, majors, minors, and sevenths. So he shows, okay, here's drop D tuning. Here are the most common chords that you're going to need. And then, and I love this so much, this is so near and dear to my heart, he has a list of recordings, famous songs, that use drop D tuning. So for example, the ones he happens to mention include Dear Prudence by the Beatles, Black Water by the Doobie Brothers. I'm picking out some here that I consider to be pretty famous songs. Going to California by Led Zeppelin, Country Road by James Taylor. So how cool is that? It's one thing to present information. That's great. It's another thing to say, hey, by the way, here is, let's call it the real world examples of it. Or here's how you can connect it with songs that maybe you've heard your whole life, and now you know what's in this tuning. He doesn't specifically show you how to play those songs. That's okay. It's beyond the scope of this book, which was only, back in the day, this book was only a few bucks. But that's okay. But it's a reference book. Man, how cool is that? And then he talks about dad-gad tuning. Anybody out there heard of dad-gad? Starting from your fat string, D-A-D, G-A-D. And the same deal. Anyways, what a cool book. Okay, so that's one of my show and tell books for today. The Alternate Tunings Guide for Guitar, written by Mark Hanson from Amsco Publications. Alternate tunings. So you tell me if there's another instrument in the musical universe that can be quickly and easily adjusted to produce a totally different variety of sounds with a different approach, opens up all sorts of new possibilities in a non-destructive way, right? Like you do it, you have fun, and then you tune it back, and you're back to where you started from. I'm not, off the top of my head, I'm not aware of conventional instruments that can do that, right? You can't take a saxophone, twist it a bit, play some crazy saxophone and twist it back, and don't try that at home, folks. So it's amazing. A banjo, well, stringed instruments lend itself to this, banjo tunings, even violin. I've heard about fiddle tunings, songs in alternate tunings for the fiddle and or violin. Mandolin, I've never, in my experience, I've never come across a mandolin tune. But you know what, that's, I'm not a hotshot mandolin player. They probably exist. Anyways, alternate tunings. How did this conversation start? Well, let me remind you, it started when we were talking about having a second guitar. You upgrade, you take 8 months of lessons, you upgrade to, like, you earn your next guitar, which I think is a fantastic idea, rewarding yourself. But you may consider holding on to your previous guitar for lots of reasons, including playing in alternate tunings. Hey, Charlie Beagle is here. Hey, Charlie Beagle. A to Z me. Did you watch the clip? I think he's actually 6 years old. But yeah, a nice kid. It's nice when something nice happens to someone who's also a nice person. Doesn't always work that way, but yeah. Okay, looking for your questions, my friend. Charlie Beagle, the book I just showed is a book you should buy. I'm going to keep you in suspense for the book you should never buy. And then you might say, well, Jonathan, why do you have that book? Like I said, I think someone is essentially cleaning out their basement and put a whole lot of musical stuff in their driveway and asked me if I wanted it. And they, how could I refuse? And the book came along with that, Audiophile says, Dad Gad tuning always reminds me of Led Zeppelin's Kashmir. You may be right. Yeah, off the top of my head. What I do know about Kashmir is that you can do a great job of faking Kashmir, getting the basic point across without retuning your guitar. And believe me, I'm all for doing it exactly like the real song goes, I know. But in a jam, I'll tell you what, when I, as a teacher, sometimes I fudge things, and this is an example, especially when a student is pretty inexperienced. I don't want to retune the guitar and have them have to deal with that for a whole week when we already have tons of stuff to practice in standard tuning. So I could totally remember or imagine myself in a situation where I'll show them how to play such and such a song, but we won't retune the guitar. There's a way you can kind of fudge it in standard tuning, and Kashmir might be an example of that. Hey, Marianne, glad you could join us. Marianne says, mandolin, question mark. Yeah, I play the mandolin a little bit. I own a mandolin, but sadly, the one that my first mandolin was not made very well and kind of self-destructed. So I got a Martin backpacker mandolin. Now, some of you might say, wait a minute, a backpacker mandolin. The Martin backpacker concept was small portable instruments. There's a backpacker guitar that I used to have. I know what happened to that. A backpacker mandolin might seem a little redundant, right? Martin did it, a backpacker mandolin. That I still do have. You know what it was? I had someone approach me for mandolin lessons. And I did a little math in my head. And I thought, if I buy this instrument, it will pay for itself with X number of lessons. And I thought, that's it. I must buy myself a mandolin because it'll pay for itself. Okay, time to pause for the cause. Ladies and gentlemen, today's live stream is brought to us by Ocean Spray. And here comes the cran grape. The cran grape experience. I grew up in Massachusetts, which at the time was the home state of Ocean Spray. I don't know where they're at nowadays, but Ocean Spray. Been around a long time. Cran everything. Okay, scrolling, my friends. North Country Fisher says, do you have to learn a whole heap of different chords in different tunings? Short answer is yes, but sometimes they're surprisingly easy chords. And if you already know your regular guitar chords, it's not a big leap sometimes, because you might say to yourself, oh, it's like a C chord, but with only two fingers. Or it's like a D, but I move my finger over one. So it's not as daunting as it seems, not necessarily as daunting as it seems. Oh, that reminds me. Thank you for your question, North Country Fisher. John Lee Hooker. I did a little dive into John Lee Hooker's style. I invested in a nice thick book of John Lee Hooker transcriptions. And John Lee Hooker often plays in alternate tunings. He did play in alternate tunings. And there's one moment in one John Lee Hooker song when he clearly was doing what you and I would call a C chord, right? A conventional C chord, index, middle, and ring C chord. But he was doing it in an alternate tuning, and the sound was kind of weird and cool, and I thought, oh, how fascinating, man. John Lee Hooker, obviously, there's proof. He clearly knows how to play C in a regular tuning. And you can imagine, just like you or I would, he thought, I wonder what would happen if I fret a C major chord in this tuning. This is me trying to see his thought process, and he liked the result. So there you go. I believe I've only made one YouTube video on a John Lee Hooker song. And so if this thing about the C chord is anywhere in my YouTube channel, it's on that one John Lee Hooker song. I can't promise you, but anyways, I thought it was so cool to be able to sort of see someone's thought process, or to walk in their shoes, so to speak. Very, very fun. Am I right? I don't know. But it seems so logical to me that you or I, someone would hand us a 6-string guitar in a different tuning. And the first thing we do, one of the first things we do is apply the knowledge we already have, right? And see what it sounds like. So, oh boy, the questions are coming in now. Audiophile man, you think I'm going to answer this question? I will read your question. I'm trying to think. Okay, Audiophile man says, what was your most embarrassing live guitar playing moment, and what did you learn from it? I'm thinking about it. I do want to answer your question. What comes to mind is I'm sorry, it's not going to be a racy story, but one thing that comes to mind is something that we probably have all done, especially if you've played live, starting off a song way too fast. Yeah, I know it's not a great story, but I've done it, and what I learned from it was, for gosh sakes, take a breath. Don't ever do that again, you know. And in the whole song, you're in a panic the whole time, and even if by some miracle you don't have a train wreck, you're not enjoying a moment of the performance. And then, you know, like a lot of us, you might play 20 songs, and the one you remember the next morning is that one, and how horrible you assume it sounded, even if the other 19 are great. I've had funny things happen to me. Now you're asking about embarrassing. I've had let me think of a good one. Okay, well, since I told a dumb thing, I'll tell you a cool thing that happened to me. Many years ago, I was playing guitar and singing in the subways of Chicago, and I had just learned a beautiful tune called Wild Mountain Time, which you've all heard that song before, right? Wild Mountain Time, Scottish folk tune. The Byrds did a version that probably helped make it famous, but those of you who are into traditional music, you know, tons of people have done Wild Mountain Time. Well, I had just learned Wild Mountain Time, and the beautiful thing about playing in a subway station is every couple minutes, the train takes away your audience, and you can do the same material you just did because, hey, it's a new audience now. And so at one point, the train came, the station emptied. I thought, oh, I'm going to do Wild Mountain Time again. Beautiful echo. There's no one around. You know, the acoustics, so to speak, sounded great. So I start doing it, and as soon as I start playing it, I hear footsteps coming down from the street level, a bunch of voices. I'm dang it, man. I'm trying to create art, you know. And so a bunch of young people, you know, come down. They're kind of looking at me, which, you know, I get it, but they seemed slightly more interested than usual. And I don't care. I'm going to sing my folk song. I'm going to, you know, I memorize the words. I learn the chords. And basically, as I'm finishing up the song, the train comes. And this is maybe 6 or 8 young folks, more or less my age at the time, you know, in my 20s, I guess. And as a train is roaring in, young guy says to me, hey, where are you from? And I'm like, where am I from? Like, how is that relevant at all, right? I'm just sitting here singing a Scottish folk song in Chicago. I don't know. I said, I'm from here. I said, where are you from? He goes, Scotland. I thought, oh, you know, I don't know. It felt kind of good. You asked about an embarrassing guitar playing moment. That is not an embarrassing moment, but it's a moment that I'll never forget. Just felt like, that's kind of cool. I mean, imagine those folks that come down. There's one guy playing one instrument in one subway station. They're visiting Chicago, and he's doing, you know, Scottish folk song. Kind of a cool thing. Okay, moving on. Your questions mean a lot to me. Let's find where we are. I see. Okay, I'm scrolling. By the way, folks, in case you are just joining us, hey, Peter Donahue, welcome. Peter Donahue, I wonder if you still have that cool carbon fiber acoustic guitar, because I see carbon fiber instruments referred to now and then. I think I actually know someone who has a carbon fiber guitar, so I wonder if you still have that guitar. I'm curious. I bet you do. I upgraded my equipment here in the studio, and hopefully you notice a slightly, or maybe a lot better resolution to the camera. And hopefully the microphone is loud and clear. Better sound quality too, I'm hoping. Okay. Scrolling. Yeah, mandolin. Hey, there's some songs that you want to learn the mandolin part, right? Like Marianne, you're talking about the mandolin from Maggie May, from Rod Stewart. Yeah, Hey, I encourage you, any of you, to don't wait. Pick up another stringed instrument. Whether you've played the guitar for a couple months or a few years, whatever. So fun to pick up another instrument. Here's my strong opinion. Your fretting hand, all the work you've done, whether you've played the guitar for a month or a decade or more, all the work you're doing with your fretting hand, that's the hard part about learning, a fretted instrument, right? It's your weak hand really having to learn all these skills, right? Even though, say, the chords or the scale patterns on the banjo or the ukulele are different, you've already done the hard work just by waking up your left hand, right? Giving your left hand all this flexibility and coordination, that you have a huge head start on playing the mandolin, playing the ukulele, playing anything, any fretted stringed instrument. So, don't delay. If you got your eye on a cute ukulele or you always want to try the banjo, go for it. You have a huge head start. So I'm always going to recommend that. Okay, Scott Rhodes is great question. And I have an answer for you, Scott. Scott is asking, in some of your older videos, there's a Danelectro rocket blaster on the rack. Do you still have that one? That was another of my first guitars. Bought it for the built-in effects. So cool. So Danelectro, one of the hippest companies. For a little while, I trafficked in used Danelectro guitars. I would buy them on eBay for my guitar shop and price them. I think I would make $20, profit, and they're just so cool. And the ones I would shop for specifically, you press a button and it would give you instant distortion, which I don't know, man. Why doesn't every guitar have that? I mean, whether you like the distortion or not, that's a different story. But I don't know. I think, to answer my own question, any kind of effects, but especially a distortion, overdrive kind of effect, it's a very personal choice. And, it may not be a selling point for most people, but for me, and Scott, sounds like for you too. Yeah, man, to press a button and have a special effect right there. Oh, and there's a nasty, outrageous, little distortion sound. So your specific question is, do I still have it? No, I think I sold, however many I had in the shop one by one, and they all found good homes. Do I wish I kept one? Yeah, kind of. I assume they're still out there somewhere. They're not particularly valuable. I wasn't investing a whole lot, but great look, very cool sound. And the Danelectro company is just a very, I always like to see, any Danelectro instrument. When I would film videos, I would load up the rack behind me to look cool. You can see how little I've changed. Some of my earliest videos, there is a sweet, I think a nice Rickenbacker back behind me. A guy had brought it into my shop. Might have even been a 12-string electric Rickenbacker, and I think he was hoping to sell it, and it did not sell because the vast majority of my clientele were people buying their first guitar and not prepared to spend that much money. But that didn't stop me from using it as a prop. Yeah. So you never know what might be back there. I'm looking now to see what I got back there. Yeah, I do own and play the instruments that are behind me now. Yeah. Oh boy. I see a comment that I want to audiophile man. You bring up a good point. Does a beer or taking a walk before the gig help? Yeah. What helps even more is really royally screwing up one time, like I mentioned, playing too fast out of nervousness, and that will cure you for a long time. I did take fiddle lessons from a teacher, trying my best to learn nice country fiddle tunes in my 20s, and at one point in one of the lessons, she said, you really might just, want to have a glass of wine every time you sit down and practice. I thought, okay, all right, I could see where she's coming from. But yeah, there's a variety of solutions. Here's the reverse, though. Since you brought up, I take a walk before a gig, maybe to get the nerves out. I knew a very experienced teacher, a great guy, who was preparing a student for an audition, right? And said to the student, here's what you do. Right now, run around the music shop, the outside of the building, 3 or 4 times. Come right in, and we're going to play your song right then, because he wanted the student to have that experience of, that accelerated heart rate. Kind of cool, why not, man? Why not? Quick aside to that story. When my wife and I first opened up our music shop in 2006, we were hiring music teachers and to teach a variety of instruments. And I was, getting a few, piano teacher here, another guitar teacher there before we opened. I signed the lease. The clock was ticking. We were going to open in, a couple months. I forget the exact time frame. The property was available, and the landlord demanded that I sign the lease for, June 1st, even though I knew I wasn't going to open until Labor Day. And I decided it was worth it. It gave us a chance to get in there, do a lot of painting, and those are the days. But here's my point. That same teacher who had the student run around the block, was a great guy, very experienced teacher. I never met him before I hired him. And one day I was retrieving voicemails, as one does, before we even opened, before I even had a complete teaching staff in place. And the guy on the voicemail, he introduced himself, and he said, I teach guitar and all the band instruments, sax, trumpet, flute, clarinet. I've taught for many years, and I'm looking for a teaching gig. I want to teach as many students as possible. I want to teach full time. And just, all those instruments, experienced teacher. From his voicemail, I could tell that he could assemble a sentence. He was coherent, And I hung up the phone. I said to my wife, let's go out to eat tonight. We just struck gold. And it was true. He was a young guy who was looking for a job as a band director, like a high school band director. But until that materialized, he needed to do, need to make money. And he was looking to teach us as much as humanly possible. And man, when someone has that many skills, did he teach the violin? Sweetie, are you there? I don't know if my wife is watching right now. Did he teach the violin too? He might have. Super musical guy. And he taught for us for a few years. And man, he helped us pay the bills until he did get a full-time high school band director gig. Beautiful thing. Okay. Hey, I'm keeping you in suspense. Some of you have been waiting. Maybe all of you have been waiting. I see 48 of you. Hey, nice. Hey, I only see 20 thumbs up. So if 28 of you wouldn't mind giving this video a thumbs up, it would do my heart good. Okay, so here is the book. You ready, folks? The book you should never buy. Never, never. And some of you already bought it. I'm sorry. The book you should never buy. And what I'm going to show you, it's not this particular exact book. It's anything like this book. Okay, are you ready? Are you ready? Here it comes. Oh, takes 2 hands. Hold on. Here it comes. Here it comes. Never buy a chord book. Don't do it. Don't do it. Some of you already have it. And if you have it, where is it? I bet it's not right there where you practice. Okay, now why would I say such an outrageous thing? This book happens to be called, and again, nothing about this particular book, the Encyclopedia of Picture Chords for All Guitarists. And they underline the word all. The only redeeming value about this book is it is kind of cool on the cover. They show all those cool necks of guitars. Everything from a Telecaster to a Les Paul, a Strat, another Gibson that could be maybe a 335, a nylon string. Okay, I'm saying such a provocative thing. I'm saying don't buy a chord book. For heaven's sake, don't spend $20 on this. Okay, any guesses as to why I'm saying this bold thing? Because you're never going to use it. You're never going to get your money's worth, you know? If you're playing music that requires, you know, an F sharp minor chord with a major 7 added, if you're playing this kind of music, you don't need this book. You are already so advanced, you're not looking up the chord in this book, you know? And if what you really want is the 16, you know, or so common chords, you don't get it from a $20 book, you know? You can find it anywhere online. I'll send it to you, you know? So chord books. That's all. I just had to get that off my chest. So you might say, why do I even have that here in the shop? I don't know. It feels weird to throw it away. I would give it away. I would gladly give it away. I know I might need it as a doorstop or to prop up something. I don't know. If I'm teaching someone, a little kid, how to play the piano, they can sit on it or something. Okay. I'm kind of having some fun here, but it seems like such a logical purchase, right? You get your first guitar, you know chords are important. Hey, there's a chord book with over 1,800, it says, 1,800 guitar chords in clear photos. $20, you're set for life, right? Yeah, you will never have to buy another chord book again, ever. That's true. That much is true. Yeah, okay. That's all. Want to get that off my chest. Okay, scrolling in search of your questions. Here we go. Charlie Beagle asks a great question. What is the difference between a fiddle player and a violinist? The instrument of a fiddle player smells like beer. That is the difference. Violinist, you would assume, is classically trained. A fiddle player may or may not be classically trained. A violinist plays predominantly classical music. A fiddle player plays everything but classical music. From a distance, do the instruments look the same? They do, but all joking aside, fiddle players may have some modifications or adjustments that a violinist would not dream of. Flattening the bridge of a fiddle is a pretty common adjustment to help them play double stops, 2 strings at the same time. Fine tuners, little metal fine tuners to fine tune a fiddle. I believe that's a real faux pas for a classical violinist. Okay, let's see. Danielle, welcome. Ooh, Danielle. Well, now Danielle, now you're asking a good question. This is different. What you're bringing up. There's a legendary teacher named Ted Greene, and Danielle is asking, do I have a copy of Ted Greene's Chord Chemistry tucked away someplace? It's on my list. I'm such a book geek, guitar book geek. I am an admirer of Ted Greene. He's on my list, and just to prove what I'm saying here, I have here in my hand a list of a set of pictures of a variety of guitar players who mean a lot to me, and I am holding up to the camera a picture of Ted Greene. I know the resolution is not so great, but there's Ted Greene on my phone. He's on my list of people to do a deep dive into Ted Greene. So no, I do not have his book, but on my list. Okay, let's see. Don't forget, folks, if you have a question for me in particular, put a couple of question marks before. Hey, Jim Brisky says, I'm practicing Moon River from your member area. Excellent. Are you going to add any more complete songs for members? Yes, I am. In fact, I just did Wild Mountain Time, which I mentioned a little while ago. I did a chord melody version of Wild Mountain Time that I will be adding soon to my website, song-bike.com. Audiophile Man asks a perfectly good question. Wouldn't a chord book be useful for a songwriter looking for a special chord? In principle, yeah. But and here's why I still would say don't get it. The books are not set up that way. If they were, that would be kind of cool. In fact, there's a book that I would buy. Instead of like, here's 1,800 chords, how about here are, let's say 100 classic chord progressions, or 30 classic chord progressions, but each of the 30 start off as like G, C, D, but then, G, C, D, D7, back to G. And you can see what I call the domino effect. Like, well, if you go G, wait for it, G, B7, that's B as in baseball, to E minor, to, let's say, D7. That would be a cool chord book. That's different. I've sort of I've shopped around for a book like that, or I've reached out and asked people with more knowledge than I do, hey, does that kind of book exist? A book with classic, popular chord progressions, popular song chord progressions. When I say popular song, I'm meaning conventional popular music, just in the broadest possible sense. Because I know a bunch of the most common chord progressions, and I know enough theory to get me into trouble. But I would like a book like that, So that's yeah. Yeah, Scott has a chord finder site that goes online. Sure, yeah, that's and it doesn't cost you $20, right? Yes, Tommy mentions a few weeks ago, Tommy asked, and I did not have time to fully answer, tips for learning to solo with just a few notes. I did mention the pentatonic scale. You say, okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. Tips for learning to solo, especially in a blues context, with just a very few notes. Yeah, well, a pentatonic scale, 5 tones, right? Pentatonic. A blues scale is really just a 6-note scale. So let's stay in the world of blues. A blues scale with six tones, 6 notes. My number one tip. Let's use the key of C as an example. Say you go on YouTube and you find a blues backing track in the key of C. Okay, nice and slow, very cool backing track. By the way, how do you find that? You go to YouTube and you type in blues backing track key of C. And sometimes you get lucky and they even put the chord names on the screen as the song is happening. So when the band changes to an F7 chord, it says F7. That can help with ear training. So you can hear like, oh yeah, I do hear that chord change and so on. Okay. So my tip would be, whatever key we're talking about, and the key of C is a perfectly good key to talk about, to learn the C blues scale, not just how to finger the C blues scale, but the name of all 6 notes in a C blues scale. The names would include C, E flat, F, G flat, G, and B flat. Okay? C, E flat, F, G flat, and G, and B flat. Okay, hopefully those are 6. Right? Those are the notes. Now, again, it's not enough just to go online and say, okay, here's how you play a C blues scale. You want to be able to name the notes as you do it. Okay? Because we're about to enter the world of target notes. And here is the most obvious example of using target notes, but it's super valuable. And if you cannot do this, then this is your homework. If you can do this, then you're ready for the next step. But 12-bar blues format. Do your homework and find out what that means, the 12-bar blues. It basically helps you predict what the next chord is and how soon it's going to show up. Okay, it's a formula. So you got to know the 12-bar blues, the formula, the format of a 12-bar blues. You have to know the C blues scale, the name of each note as you play it. Okay, and here it is, target notes. Whatever note whatever chord the backing track is on, say they're just about to change to F7 and here comes F7. Your job is to target the F note and play it at the exact moment that the band changed to F7. When the band changes back to C7, make sure you play the note C at that exact moment. Same thing with G7, you play the note G. You are targeting the root note of each chord, okay? That number one, it's mandatory. You know, you're not going to improve as any kind of lead guitar player if you can't put all that stuff together. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is mandatory. Number two, it just sounds so good. It sounds so organized, you know. So literally you're playing what I call target notes. I think everyone calls them target notes. You're specifically targeting the root note of every chord. F during an F7 chord, for example, or G during a G7. Okay. Once you can do that, you still do that, but then I would encourage you to place any other notes as long as the next time there's a chord change, make sure you're ready to play that root note. So here comes the F chord. I play an F, but while the F chord is going, now I can play E flat, C, B flat, but I can, because I know my 12-bar blues format, I know, okay, here comes, let's say the next chord is a C7. So there's two parts of your brain. One is playing the guitar, and the other half of your brain is monitoring where you are in the song. Not easy, not easy. That's why when you pick a backing track to do this with, slow. You could include slow, the word slow in your search, your YouTube search. Slow blues backing track in the key of C. So that is not just for you, but for anybody. And by the way, this goes beyond just blues. You have to know the chord changes to whatever the song is. And you have to know within the scale, and it could be any scale, it could be a major pentatonic scale or just a major scale. You got to know the names, the notes. The band changes to A minor, you play the note A. Band changes to D7, you play the note D. And by the time you're comfortable doing that, you are certainly more than ready to expand upon that concept. You know, that is one of the many videos or series of videos I would love to make. And thanks for reminding me. Okay. Scott Rhodes is mentioning another book that's sort of like what I mentioned, How to Write Songs on Guitar. Has a progressions section that's a lot like, okay, cool. That's great. Excellent. Okay, I don't see too many question marks. So I'm going to move on to my agenda. I do have an agenda here today. We talked about my student on stage with John Mellencamp. We talked about the cool D'Addario Planet Waves acoustic quick-release guitar strap device. Okay, here are some of my favorite quotes from students for the past number of decades. Not quotes, questions, I should say, questions. Last week I shared with you my favorite student quote of all time, and I believe that's in a timestamp in the description of last week's live stream. Here are some of my favorite questions I've received from students over the years. I'm checking my notes to make sure I get them right. Okay. This one, sadly, is a relatively common question for the younger of my students. The question I get sometime, we're in the middle of a lesson, we're about to play, what I hope would be their homework song, what I hope they've been working on, or anything we're working on. And I'll say to a student, okay, let's do it. And the student will work their way through a song and say, okay, well, now let's do it again. The student will look at me with wonderment and in the innocence that only a child could ask. They say, why do I have to do it twice? I've heard that question many times, So we have a conversation about, getting good at something. Sometimes, you do have to do it twice, but it feels so good. My sales pitch, and it's true 99% of the time, the second time you do anything, it's so much easier. And there may be a life lesson in that. But for sure, the second time you play any song on the guitar is at least a little bit easier. Okay, second question that I've received only a few times. I have a feeling this might be a question that students keep in their heads and don't come out and ask me. But over the years, I have had students say to me, what's your real job? Again, a fair question. I may have had many adult students who wonder about that, but have the tact to not actually ask that question. This has been my real job for 31 years. And one of my favorite questions, and this is from years ago, but a student looked at me and said, "Are you a boy or a dad?" I still think about that question. I'm pretty sure I asked, are those my only two options? But if those were only two options, I believe at that point I was still a boy and not yet a dad. But those are some of my favorite questions over the years that I have received. Okay, so I'm looking for your questions. What are we talking about? What are we here for if not your questions? Okay. Yes. Okay. Harmonica and guitar progress. I see your question mark. How many years until I felt I was a good guitar player? And when did I get my own voice to create? And what does that actually mean? And I'm not going to be all modest and be like, oh, I still don't think I'm a very good guitar player. Partly because that's not a very helpful answer. And partly because, no, I very much do remember certain moments when something kind of clicked into place and I realized, wow, not only can I do this thing, but I could do it 10 times in a row and sound consistent. I love that word as a guitar teacher, consistent, right? When you can do something consistently, you've got it. Doesn't mean you're not playing something well, but there's nothing like doing it 10 times in a row, right? Science. Can you recreate what you previously did? So how many years till I felt I was a good guitar player? Let's see, I started when I was 16, and let me think. I knew I knew I was missing a lot of skills. I could get up and strum through a song and sing along within my limitations. But that's a big difference from being, feeling like I was a good guitar player. Even though to someone watching me, they say, wow, that guy's strumming and singing, and I was competent within those very specific limitations. Down, down, up, down, 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 up, down, C, D, E minor, hey, beginner guitar, thank you for the super chat. So I would say, here's something I remember very vividly. Oh, so I didn't take lessons as a beginner guitar player. It was many, 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 many years before I took my first guitar lesson. So my progress was not linear. And for a long time, I really wanted to write songs more than I wanted to write songs and play songs more than make serious guitar progress. Because once you can strum a little bit and play a bunch of the most common chords, that then you can get up and do your songs. You can do that, and that is great. But I was aware that I was not making serious guitar progress. So I started when I was 16. When I was 19 or so, I started working in a guitar store, and I saw all the teachers teaching there, and I became super aware that my skills were really limited. So I would say by the time I was 21, so I've been playing guitar for about 5 years, give or take, I could finger pick a Mississippi John Hurt song or two and sound pretty competent. Like I could play it right. I could play it and sound like Mississippi John Hurt, this light and quick and competent and smooth. And that was a big achievement. I knew it. I didn't need anyone to tell me it sounded good. I knew it sounded good because it took me forever. I went from mechanical to musical. Some of you have heard me use that phrase before, mechanical to musical. And I could just feel it. This felt good. So that was, and I knew it was a real song. I mean, I knew it was Mississippi John Hurt finger picking. It wasn't just strumming through an old Bob Dylan song. Nothing wrong with that. But, I wasn't playing it as well as Bob Dylan, that's for sure, but I could do it. So I guess I had different moments where I felt like I'd made serious progress that I could repeat consistently, that no one could take away from me. No one could, either you're playing it right or you're not. And if you're playing it right, no one can tell you you're not playing it right. So, so let's say 5 years. Now, if I could go back in time, I would not repeat the path and the choices that I made. I hope your takeaway is not that it takes 5 years to get good at the guitar. I remember learning a pentatonic scale, what I call the headquarters pattern. So in the key of A minor, it'd be like 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, 5, 8, and memorizing it and realizing, okay, I can move that up and down the neck to get different keys, and starting to figure out some Freddie King blues songs that I thought semi-correctly were based on that specific minor pentatonic pattern, and that felt great. I was probably a little further into my 20s. That felt great. I knew I wasn't Freddie King, but I knew I was on track. I'm like, whoa, man, I'm finding this stuff. So I know I'm not giving you great specific answers. Yeah. I will say this. My significant progress came when I would really focus on some very specific guitar skills as opposed to writing songs. Because my concept of songwriting was put together interesting sounding chord progressions, find a melody that worked with those chord progressions, and then write lyrics, hopefully somewhat non-mediocre lyrics, working on my singing. That was such a big priority for me for so long. And I had no problem with that. Without a song, you don't have anything anyways, right? You have to start with a song. And I knew people who were working hard on playing this Pink Floyd guitar solo or playing this one Neil Young song exactly how Neil Young played it. I mean, and I respected the dedication that took. But I would rather learn 10 songs and write 4 songs and get up and strum and play within my limited abilities. That was a much bigger priority to me than playing fast scales up and down the neck. Now I want to play fast scales up and down the neck. So I hope I'm giving you an idea of how I look at my progress. But I would not repeat. I would have taken lessons from the best teacher I could find from day one. I would have practiced scales and arpeggios from day one. Now, a scale book is worth its weight in gold. I've been joking about, the chord book. Don't buy the chord books. You should all go and buy a scale book right now if you don't have a scale book. That's different, man. That's different. Scales, at a minimum, scales make your fretting hand fast and coordinated. You get confident. If you do your scales with down-up picking, it makes your picking hand more faster and more confident. That's different. I would have practiced scales and arpeggios from the day I brought home my guitar. Okay. Now, in terms of finding your own voice, that's a big topic. And that part, I am going to be humble and not falsely modest and say, oh man, I'm still finding my own voice. But I will tell you what's going on in my little brain as I, in my, at the moment. I realize that when I do something that appeals to me on the guitar, I realize that it really feels like what I would do on the drums. All my training is as a drummer. I took hardcore drum lessons for about 6 years until I started playing the guitar. And that's where all my training and all my early musical experience was as a drummer / percussionist. And there are things that I find myself doing on the guitar. And I think to myself, man, that's the kind of thing a drummer would do to a guitar, a little aggressive, a little trying to get some certain sounds out. And I find that super interesting because, hey, if finding your voice on the guitar is just that, taking it face value, it's what only you would do on a guitar. Okay, well, not many drummers, end up as guitar players. It's me and Dave Grohl. No. Who else had Albert King? I think Albert King played drums. I mean, there's a lot of people. I'm kind of joking. There's a lot of people who start on one instrument and end up on another instrument. But as I hope to find my voice in the guitar, if I had time to sit down and actually play for the pleasure of it, which I often don't, yeah, man, I hope someone says about me someday, oh, dude, you can hear the way he plays guitar, you can hear he started off as a drummer. You can just hear it, the percussive techniques and the repetitive rhythm and stuff like that. I would love for someone to say that, hopefully in a flattering way. So now, right to your point, how do you find your voice? Okay, I do have a specific tip or challenge for you. And this applies mostly to people who have played the guitar for a while, as opposed to someone who is joining us here in our community of the 44 amongst us, who maybe just got a guitar last week or a month or just a little while ago. Okay. I ask this to a lot of people when they take their very first guitar lesson from me. Is there something that you just sit down and start doing on the guitar every time you start playing the guitar? Just something you absentmindedly, could be a certain famous riff, could be something you made up yourself, could be just a couple of chord changes. That the thing that you do absentmindedly, that is significant. That's really, really significant. Follow your instinct. That's a very general answer, but believe me, I've talked to enough people who do very different things. The answers are very different, and that's definitely significant. The thing that you do automatically. So I'll leave it at that. But that's a significant, flashing light. Now, while we're talking about this, I was thinking about this because I know I missed this question about finding your voice in a previous live stream. And as I was preparing my answer for this live stream, I was reminded of a quote from Steve Vai. You all know Steve Vai, right? Steve Vai has earned a place for himself in the pantheon of successful, talented guitar players. I don't know much about Steve Vai, about his style. It's just not a style that I gravitate to. But he certainly has made a name for himself and is extremely talented. Okay, so I read a quote from Steve Vai that made me insane. And I had a knee-jerk reaction. And because, it's 2023, I immediately posted my knee-jerk reaction in the comments of this whole thing and had mixed feelings about what I posted. Okay, so the quote was from Steve Vai, something along the lines of, do not worry about your weaknesses on the guitar, focus on your strengths. Take your strengths and double down on your strengths. Forget about your weaknesses, work on your strengths. And then he went on to say something about music theory, like I think he said something like Jeff Beck probably doesn't know much about music theory, but it doesn't matter because he is so talented or something like that. Now, I can't promise you this is an accurate Steve Vai quote. And I can't promise you that I'm remembering it correctly, but it made me nuts. Because even though I kind of know what he was, I have a feeling about what he was trying to say. I put myself in the shoes of someone who was new to guitar. And my knee-jerk reaction, which I posted, which was something effective, he sounds like a really a bitter old guitar teacher who should retire. And what he said, I would never in a million years say to anyone, let alone people in a guitar community who are trying to better their skills and trying to get somewhere in their instrument. So this is not really about Steve Vai, but it is about finding your voice. So in the months since this whole thing transpired on the internet and in my brain, I think part of what he was getting at was We all have strengths and weaknesses. I think he was saying the same thing about himself. And celebrate your strengths. If you're awesome at finger picking, if you're awesome at sweep picking, tapping, if you have an encyclopedic knowledge of chords, go with that, go with that, spotlight that about your playing. What I read was ignore your weaknesses. And I think what I would now interpret him as saying is, as you find your voice on your instrument, don't beat yourself up for what you're not good at. As a teacher, all I deal with is students' weaknesses. So that's why his quote rubbed me the wrong way. And whatever he said about Jeff Beck or knowing theory, I had a knee-jerk reaction. I have a knee-jerk reaction anytime anybody assumes they know what's going on in any guitar player's head, including what they do or do not know. So, and again, this has nothing to do with Steve Vai. I'm past Steve Vai, I'm just saying, like, look, man, we don't know what anybody knows. And we certainly shouldn't use that as an excuse for not learning everything you can about your chosen instrument, So I'll leave it at that. But that I wanted to bring that up in the context of finding your voice in your instrument. Of course, work on your weaknesses. Acknowledge them, work on them. Maybe your pinky just never does what you want to do. Maybe when you're playing a chord, maybe you haven't mastered an F chord yet. Well, that's a weakness, right? But you're not going to not learn an F chord, right? So that's as a veteran guitar teacher, I don't like to hear about people avoiding their weaknesses. I don't like to hear saying, because so-and-so doesn't, or probably doesn't, or might not know something, therefore don't worry about it if you don't know that. Like I said, I'm describing this as a knee-jerk reaction, because I hear these attitudes now and then, in general, from not so famous people, from my students, and just from other musicians in general. We all should learn as much as we can about our instrument. We all should celebrate our strengths. We all should work on our weaknesses. And those three things, that's how you find your voice. What are you already good at? What comes naturally? What's working out well for you? What could you improve upon? And how do you increase, your knowledge of your instrument? Yeah. Okay. Thanks for listening. Okay. I am scrolling a bit here, my friends. Steve Vai is the guy from Crossroads, but Steve Vai has a whole celebrated career, and again, very talented guy. So I'll say it one more time. My little chat just now is not really about him in particular. That quote that I read, first of all, he might not even have said it, or might not have said it like that, and I might not be remembering it exactly right. Yeah. Okay. Scrolling, looking for those question marks. Charlie Beagle, you're asking some deep questions here. What was the worst song I ever wrote? I remember a lyric. I remember one of my first lyrics that popped into my head as a young guy, and man, it was even before I think it was even before I played the guitar. I think I was like a closet songwriter even before I played the guitar. And I remember I saw some kids. This is the dumbest story. If anyone needs to go to the kitchen and get like some cookies, now is the time. This is a dumb story. I remember seeing some kids playing, and I was out delivering newspapers, and this lyric popped in my head as I watched the kids playing while I was delivering newspapers. I thought, the young ones are the lucky ones. Yeah, because like they were 8 and I was 11. Yeah, the worst lyrics I ever wrote, maybe. Yeah. I'll let you know if I come up with anything worse than that, Okay, so beginner guitar. I'm glad you brought up this point. I'm going to call this the day off phenomenon. The day off phenomenon, such as you take a day off from practicing your guitar, right? There is a very real phenomenon that I have experienced, my students have experienced, maybe you have experienced it, and it is this. You take a day off, but when you come back to the guitar, you are better. Makes no sense, right? Okay. It does happen. But my feeling is that it's not magic, but it does happen. And those of you who have experienced this, you know what I'm talking about. Here is what I've personally found, and beginner guitar, John, he and I have talked about this recently. The way I think we can explain it, or at least what I notice when it happens to me, and maybe when it happens to my students too, when you are practicing every day and you work on some very specific material, it might even be the same exact song every day, for 5 days, 7, however long. Then you take a day off. It's almost like you've earned a day off, right? Then you come back to it and you play it better, even though you took a day off. I think that's what it takes. So for the day off phenomenon to actually happen in your life, you do have to pay your dues to get to that point where, whether it's your brain is sorting something out while you sleep, which, hey man, I don't know. I'm not beyond dismissing that. Or your fingers, I don't know, man, you've stressed out your muscles, but they have a chance to rebuild, or something is going on anatomically. I'm not prepared to dismiss that either. You're the thing that you were struggling with on Thursday, all of a sudden Saturday you can kind of do it. You think, wait, what just happened? I took Friday off. So it's a real phenomenon, but you have to earn it. If you practice just randomly, you don't practice for a week, but then you play on Monday, you take a day off on Tuesday, and Wednesday you're not noticeably better. Yeah, you didn't earn it. Anyways, that's my take on the day off phenomenon. I can't guarantee it's going to happen, but I bet you anything that when it does happen, it's because you paid your dues leading up to that day off. By the way, nothing wrong with taking a day off, even if it doesn't lead to that magic breakthrough. Those of you who are, anyone who plays the guitar a lot, but especially you're in your 30s, 40s, so on. Yeah, man, you can stress yourself out, and you want to avoid that at all costs. Whether it's like literally carpal tunnel or just the precursor to carpal tunnel, or you name it. Nothing wrong with taking a day off. For most of us, taking a day off is not a problem. Life gets in the way, and you end up taking a day off. Okay. I want to remind you guys that I do teach online guitar lessons. And if those of you out there are interested, I'm putting my email address in the chat. And you can contact me. That's how you reach me. I just put my email address in the chat. Online guitar lessons. I love using FaceTime, but actually with my new setup here, Skype and Zoom might work. I'm kind of down on Zoom. I take that back. Zoom, I don't want to pay for Zoom. I don't want to pay for Zoom when Skype and FaceTime are free. Anyways, I use those platforms, and we handle the money with Venmo or PayPal or whatever. And yeah, so if you want to do some lessons, especially if by any chance you are available for lessons in the morning or lunchtime kind of hours of the day. I'm on the East Coast, so some of you might have to mentally adjust to East Coast time. For example, it's 6:30 p.m. right now here in the East Coast. My time zone is the same as New York City. So send me an email if you'd like to do some lessons, and I am happy to help. I don't have much available in the mid-afternoon and evening hours, but morning and lunch times, I do have some availability Monday through Friday. Okay. Looking for any other questions at the moment. Let's see. What do we... Hey, it's funny. You guys are mentioning Last Kiss. Man, there's this phenomenon, the Last Kiss phenomenon. People love that song, man. When Pearl Jam covered that tune, I swear half my students came in to the next lesson and said, you know what song I want to learn? Last Kiss. That song really, really, resonates with a lot of people. Jim Brisk is asking, can I suggest a scale book and picking book? I'm sorry, I don't have a specific one that I suggest. Any scale book. Unlike the chord book, where I say stay away from any, massive chord book, any scale book All the major publishers, I'm sure, have at least one scale book. Hal Leonard and Alfred, and who else is out there? Mel Bay. Any scale book is good. You'll never regret. They tend to be pretty inexpensive. You certainly don't buy the most expensive one. I mean, any scale book is good, because the absolute number one thing you're going to use a scale book for is helping your fretting hand get fast and confident. But having said that, there are some scale books that do incorporate other information. So, which is kind of cool. So it's not just page after page of tablature and scale diagrams. They give you an idea of when you might use that scale in the real world, which is cool, but that's not mandatory. Because remember, the number one reason to practice scales at all, from my point of view, is it makes your fretting hand so much faster and more agile. Don't forget, always do alternate picking at all costs. Down, up, down, up, down, up, with no exceptions anytime you're practicing scales. Okay. I'm scrolling up a little bit, my friends, just because I don't want to miss anything. Jim had asked, am I an EMT in my spare time? Funny you should ask. I began as a volunteer firefighter, and a lot of you probably live in places where there's a volunteer fire department, and I certainly do. All the towns on the Connecticut shoreline where I live, every town has a volunteer fire department. I was a volunteer firefighter for about 8 years, and then I was cross-trained as an EMT, and I was an EMT for about 4 years, which includes the pandemic years, which I think, that's a year of pandemic EMT service is like worth 2 years, before or after the COVID. And I call it my tour of duty. So I did my tour of duty as a volunteer firefighter, and learned a lot. Had some interesting experiences, and I did my tour of duty as an EMT. And let me tell you, those of you who are first responders in any capacity, thank you for what you do. And if you know any first responders, make sure you give them a hearty handshake and thank them for what they do. The world needs more volunteer firefighters, and the world needs more EMTs. So if any of you are considering it, there's a need. There's a big need. And I feel I definitely am aware that even though I had plenty of my own reasons to step away from it, I'm aware that the departments around here really need more people. And it was a tough call for me to step away from being a first responder. So I'll tell you a funny story. It won't stop me from telling you a funny story, though. We went on an EMT call to pick up a woman who I don't remember the call, but was not feeling well. No blood or guts or anything like that. And the person's last name happened to be Funk, F-U-N-K, Funk. That was the woman's last name. And we brought her to the clinic where we brought most of our patients. And on the way home, I said to my fellow EMT, I said, we just did. We just brought the funk. I do have other stories, but that's one of my favorite stories. We brought the funk. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. So folks, we got about 20 minutes left here. So feel free to jump in and ask any other questions. Oh, let's talk about some other books. Oh, I'll keep this quick because I do want to get to your questions. Let's talk about some books that I highly recommend. Okay. This one, I got a surprising amount of use out of this book with students, and then also for my own fun. Surf and Spy Hits for Easy Guitar. Surf and Spy Hits. Being a student of American culture, that was my major in college, it's kind of fascinating that surf guitar does kind of dovetail in with spy music, this minor key James Bond twangy guitar kind of sound. So this is a very cool book, Surf and Spy Guitar for Easy Guitar. This is from the Alfred Publishing Company. I paid $12.95 for it back in the day. Of course, it includes guitar tablature. They've simplified the songs a little bit, but they're not. There's not baby stuff. Songs include the Batman theme, the James Bond theme, the theme from Peter Gunn, the theme from Pink Panther, Rebel Rouser from Dwayne Eddy, of course, Wipeout by the Surfaris. There's about 12, 13 tunes altogether. What a cool book. I've used this with tons of students, and I just like that book a lot. Surf and Spy Hits for Easy Guitar. They don't credit an author. And I assume when a publisher does that and they don't credit someone who transcribed these tunes, I assume it was probably a staff thing. Like, they have a staff and everyone does 3 tunes. And they should still give them some credit. It kind of bugs me. Okay, slide guitar. There's a book I went to school on for slide guitar, and I definitely recommend it. I hope it's still in print. This is from the terrific guitar player, author Arlen Roth, R-O-T-H, Arlen Roth. The book is called Traditional, Country, and Electric Slide Guitar, or it might just be called Slide Guitar, by Arlen Roth. This one is from Oak Publications, which again, that publisher might not be around anymore, but hopefully the book itself is still in print. What a cool book. Oh man, covers open E tuning, open G, open A, open D. Very cool arrangements of songs, country kind of tunes, blues kind of tunes. What a cool slide guitar book. Definitely recommend that one. Okay. Surprise. I was surprised to find this book was surprisingly cool. Rock Guitar for Dummies. Rock Guitar for Dummies. From the Hal Leonard publisher. And this has, I'm going to say, I don't know, about 35 tunes. Again, with all these books have tablature. Do not let that be a concern. For those of you who don't read official, music, piano music, for lack of a better term, everything I'm talking about has guitar tablature. Now, what I like about this book is not just the variety of, essentially classic rock kind of tunes. Born to be Wild, Proud Mary, Walk This Way, Message in a Bottle. What I like about this especially is there's a whole section where for each tune, they go into a little description about the tune, about, they call them, I think, performance notes. Yeah, performance notes. So it's like what a teacher would tell you about the tune. It's not just, here's where you put your fingers. It's like it gives you a little information and tips and stuff. Very cool. They did not have to do that. Very cool. So, okay, one last book, and this is going to be a curveball for some of you, but I have used this book so much. Okay, I'm going to keep you in suspense while I have some more of my crayon grape, brought to you by Ocean Spray. Okay, what a cool songbook. Anybody remember this? Anybody recognize this book? The Rise Up Singing Songbook. 1,200 songs crammed into one book. Why is it so valuable? Number one, the spiral binding alone, man. That's half the reason I like this book right there. It stays open. Okay, the reason I use this book, I'm going to refer to this as more of a reference book. This is not how to play the guitar, but there is such a huge variety of tunes in here. A few Beatles songs, some Broadway tunes for singing around the campfire, Bob Dylan tunes, just a huge variety of 1,200 songs. What they give you is the complete lyrics and the names of the chords in the order that they're presented. This is not how to play the guitar at all. They don't tell you how to strum the songs. But there's so many great songs in here that for some of you, that is all you need. You need the lyrics and you need the order that the chords go in, and you can take it from there. It's not for everybody, but oh man, I've used this book so much, including for just my own, building up my own repertoire. So anyways, there it is. This has to still be in print. Rise Up Singing. And this is, it's distributed by Hal Leonard. I don't know, the Sing Out magazine. Anyone remember Sing Out magazine, the folk magazine that goes back, I think, to the 50s, or certainly around the 60s. But this is, mine says distributed by Hal Leonard. Anyways, very cool songbook, not for everyone. So buyer beware. If you can see a few sample pages, how about if Mr. Genius here holds up a sample page? Okay. One of my favorites. You've heard me say before, I'm a big John Prine fan. Okay, I'm going to hold this up to the camera. Here's how they present Paradise by John Prine. You see that up there? Okay, so there's the lyrics. There's the order of the chords. Okay, they make the chorus of the song boldface, so you know it's the chorus of the song. Okay, so for some of you, this is not helpful at all. But if you know the song, you know how to finger those chords, a lot of you can be up and running. Or let's say you're taking guitar lessons from somebody, right? And I hope you do take guitar lessons from someone in your area. You could bring them that book and say, hey man, here's the lyrics, here's the chords. What I need to know is how I should strum or fingerpick the song. And potentially you might need a little help in how much time to spend on each chord. But if I were a guitar teacher and someone brought in a very specific request with a book right there and everything, essentially is presented, or there's a wealth of information, right? So what I would do is I'd pull out my phone. Ideally, I could find the song on Spotify. I would listen to the vibe of the song, and I would either try to find the exact strum picking pattern, if there was one, or I would, based on my little toolbox of strum patterns, I would find a strum pattern that would work for that song that was also easy enough for that student to do. So, okay, those are my book recommendations. Hey, before I forget, I'm glancing over here at my notes about my visit to Maine. I know you guys have been hanging out with me for a long time here. So for you diehard folks, especially those of you who are New Englanders, I will be doing a few little meet and greet kind of get-togethers at a few music stores in early August. So just to recap, those of you who may live anywhere near Portland, Maine, Buck Dancer's Choice. I plan on being there Wednesday, August 2nd at 4 p.m. Okay, and just say hi, no big deal, but I'd love to meet some of you and support a local music store. So let's all buy some strings and picks and whatever. Deep down inside, I'd love to find a sweet guitar that I can't live without. That'd be really great. But that's not my plan. I really couldn't even afford a nice new guitar. I probably should leave my credit card at home. How about in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Friday, August 4th? I plan to be at Gary's Guitar Store in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Friday, August 4th. Same thing, about 4 p.m. And then Toontown in Wells, Maine. It'll probably be one of the remaining nights, maybe Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday. Toontown in Wells, Maine. So I hope those of you who live anywhere close by can come and say hello, and we can chat and support local music store and enjoy the beautiful New England weather this time of year. Which I gotta say, man, today was a gorgeous day here in Connecticut. Just warm enough, just enough of a breeze, and I know we're going to wrap up in about 10 minutes. And you know what? There's still sunshine and a breeze out there. So don't feel sorry for me. I'm going to head out there and enjoy it. Okay. Hey, Jim, thank you for your super chat. As we're getting close to the end of yet another live stream, our 10th. Hey, for those of you who love the metric system, 10. This is, 10 live streams. And I will see you next week as well. But, Stephen, you'll be at Buck Dancer's Choice. Excellent. I'll see you there, Stephen. I'll be the guy. You'll know me. I'll look like this, probably. What I want to say is, again, my landlord would like me to tell you that you're always welcome to contribute to the cause by making a super chat donation down at the bottom of the screen. Click on that $sign and show your support. And I thank you in advance. And for those of you who have already made super chat donations, I thank you in advance. Okay, I am going to scroll up. Harmonica and Guitar Progress asks, John, would you visit Downtown Sounds in Northampton? Oh yeah, I'm sure I've been there before. I think Northampton is the coolest place. It takes me maybe an hour to get there, maybe. But Northampton, Massachusetts, a shocking number of music stores and record stores in Northampton. Like I did not see that coming on my visits to Northampton. It's a beautiful thing. Since we're all friends here, I will tell you that I have a recurring dream, not often enough, but it is recurring. I have a recurring dream that I'm walking in a city, in a neighborhood in a city. And it's basically based on my memories of the Rogers Park area of Chicago, where I lived in or around Rogers Park for a bunch of years in Chicago. My recurring dream is that it's kind of like an early evening. And I'm so happy in this dream because I'm in a neighborhood where there's music shop next to record store, next to another music shop. And in the dream, I'm just like sticking my head in one and walking around and then back out to the street and walk over to the next one. And so Northampton, to your point, kind of surprised me. Hey, Dashel, I didn't see you before, Dashel. Thank you for joining us. Dan brings up an interesting point, which crossed my mind. Dan said, any chance you could record for YouTube some of your visits or chats in those music stores? Yeah, that I have to think about it. But it did occur to me that it would be fun to I don't know, to document it in some way. For sure, I'll be posting it, social media, partly so my accountant can see that yes, I did go to Maine and go to these music stores, and that's why I'm deducting certain expenses from my trip. So by the way, folks, you can find me on social media, Instagram and Facebook. Just do a search for the word Songbike, the phrase Songbike, Songbike, all one word, Songbike. And follow me on social media, Facebook or Instagram, and you'll get updates about all this stuff and whatever else is on my mind. So Dan, you're asking a good question. I've been in my mind, thinking about what could be a fun thing to do. And I haven't come up with anything yet, but thank you for putting it back in my head. Okay. Scrolling up, my friends. Oh, so Harmonica and Guitar Progress. Yeah, listen, man, if we could meet up in Downtown Sounds and grab a coffee, and that'd be so much fun. What's better than visiting a local music shop? And the ones that I've been to in Northampton, holy cow, they're packed to the gills, including some really interesting stuff. It's not just like a bunch of predictable stuff. I should definitely leave my wallet in the car. It'd be the practical thing to do. Yeah. Dashel, I'm glad that you have that book, Dashel. Awesome. Yeah. Now, Dashel, you're talking about that slide guitar book by Arlen Roth called Slide Guitar. My copy came with a black plastic flexible flexi disc record. I hopefully you got something a little more practical than that, but somewhere I still have that flexi disc record with examples from the book. Audiophile Man loves playing the James Bond theme. Yeah. Yep. I'm scrolling up to make sure if any of you folks asked a question and I did not see it, feel free to ask it again and just put some question marks before. North Carney Fisher, a while back you asked, do I recommend the spider walk technique for stretching and control? I do if it's what I'm thinking of. I don't call it a spider walk, but I think the principle of it is playing 4 consecutive frets on one string and leaving each of your fingertips down after you use it. So you end up with all 4 fingers stretching across 4 frets. And there's lots of variation in this. So if that's what you mean in general by like a spider walk kind of exercise, oh yeah. And there's lots of variation of this. That's like kind of the no-brainer, and you do that on every string. Yeah. The important thing, whether you're doing this exact one, my nickname for that is the daily exercise, but whether you're doing this exact one or something similar to it, go slowly. The whole point is to stretch out your left hand. So number one, go slowly. Number two, in general, your thumb should be fully extended. You don't want your knuckle to bend or anything, but fully extended, but pointing up towards the ceiling. Okay, your thumb should be pointing up towards the ceiling, not what I call parallel to the neck. You probably couldn't achieve this thing. You probably couldn't execute this thing if your thumb was parallel to the neck. North County Fisher, that if we're talking about the same thing, then yeah, I recommend that and all the variations on that, for sure. Oh, Stephen, the baseball metaphor. Yes, thank you. So here's the baseball metaphor. And I think about this as a teacher, but also I try to apply it to myself, meaning I try to walk the walk. Okay, here's the baseball metaphor. A pitcher, a hypothetical pitcher, isn't having a bad day, man. And the manager makes the walk to the mound, right? And they confer. Or maybe the manager doesn't make the walk to the mound, but clearly the manager realizes he's got to make a decision. Sometimes the manager leaves the pitcher in. And the metaphor here is, I'll be watching a student do something, anything, right? And sometimes the student, it's not working. And I bite my tongue for a minute and I remind myself, sometimes you leave the pitcher in. Sometimes you let the student work it out. Hey, maybe the bases are loaded, man. But you want to show the pitcher that you have faith that they can get out of it. You leave the pitcher in. Sometimes, right? Do you see any World Series trophies behind me? No, but sometimes you leave the pitcher in. So as a teacher, sometimes I make the choice to let the student keep doing it. I kind of monitor their frustration level. I monitor their progress. Hey, are they getting a little bit better each time they repeat it? Okay, then maybe I just watch, And then sometimes you step and you say, hey, you know what? Let me help. By the way, quick aside, living in Chicago for a bunch of years, I followed the Chicago Cubs. And this is also a metaphor, although I'll let you decide what this is a metaphor for, because it's something that stayed with me. But I was watching a Cubs game on TV, and the Cubs are going through every pitcher in the bullpen. When I say every pitcher, I mean every pitcher. And the game was nowhere near being over. And the Cubs made what seemed to me to be an outrageous decision. And when you hear it, you too may agree it was an outrageous decision. They put Gary Gaetti on the mound. Gary Gaetti. I'm going to put his name in the chat. Why not? Now, I don't know Gary Gaetti. I know he played third base. I know nobody was expecting to see him pitch that day, including Mrs. Gaetti and the little Gaettis. Gary Gaetti. So at a certain point towards the end of the Cubs game, Gary Gaetti took the mound and pitched exactly how you would think a third baseman would pitch. So what's the metaphor? It stayed with me. Sometimes in life, you got to put the third baseman on the mound. The game's not over yet, and you have and that is your best option. So I'll let you do with that as you will. But while we're talking about baseball metaphors, this would have been, I think, in the late 90s, maybe. Maybe it only left an impression on me, but it's something that stayed with me all these years. Yeah. Okay, I'll leave it at that. But sometimes that's, we all have those days, right? Where metaphorically, you got to put the third baseman on the mound. Okay. Harry asks, Harry, you didn't put the question marks first, but I'm gonna answer your question there. Harry says, with all respect, did anybody ever refer to you as the Mr. Rogers of music? You are an excellent teacher. I take that compliment. I receive that as it's given, and I appreciate that very much. I have been told that I haven't an easy way about how I present information. And I'll take it. I'll take that as a compliment. Yes, I have been told the comparison has been made to not only Mr. Rogers, but to the one and only Bob Ross. I have been compared to Bob Ross. And I'll take it. I feel like I'm just talking about the guitar and how to play the guitar. But I would just as soon take those. I can sleep well tonight with those comparisons. But yeah, for the better part of a decade, I have been told about that, about the comparison, Bob Ross and Mr. Rogers. So great, I'll take it. Dan says, tell me about your guitar stand. Obviously you use it, so I guess I can get one and leave my guitars out of their cases. Yeah, so I have that rack back there. Very handy. I guess it would hold about 8 guitars. It wasn't cheap. I think it was under having any guitar right there, you're bound to play it, right? If you are so into guitar that you buy multiple guitars, then hey, you might as well just play them. I mean, you got to play them, right? You don't want to just be that person who just keeps them in the cases. So having them out right there makes it much more likely you're going to pick it up and play it. Number 2, it's nice to look at, man. Just, look at those. Like your instruments, my instruments bring back memories to me of how that big bass guitar. You know how I got that big bass guitar back there? Right there. One of my high school students, he was barely in high school, I think. He was doing so well on the guitar that I hired him to be my bass player. Like, I don't know what else to do with this kid. I was a pretty inexperienced teacher. And I felt guilty because I just wasn't that advanced a guitar player or teacher. And this young guy was doing so great. And so partly to ease my own guilt about, running out of stuff to teach him, I had this recurring coffee house gig. And I said, hey, man, you want to play bass with me on Saturday nights? Like, yeah, sure. And the story doesn't end there. I had another kid. I made him the piano player. He was taking guitar lessons from me, but he was already a good keyboard player from some other teacher. And I felt the same feelings of regret about, geez, how am I want to give this kid some more challenges. And so I had a thing going with 2 high school kids backing me up. We were great. We were better than great, man. And at least one of them went on to play professionally. And the other one, I bet he did. I lost track of him, but I bet he did. Okay, my friends. So it's just after 7 o'clock. I'm going to scroll up to see if there's any questions I missed. And also, does anybody feel the resolution of today's live stream is noticeably any different than in previous weeks? Because it should be. For the investment that I made, you should be able to count the hairs on my eyebrow. But if you can't, that's okay. But if anybody out there does notice a better quality resolution in the video, I'd love to hear about it. And if you don't, let me know that too. It's all good. Okay, so I'm looking at my little agenda here. Okay, I think that I covered everything that I wanted to. I still haven't set up those Sweetwater affiliate links, but before we wrap up, I want to remind you that when I get more time, I will set those up. And just for those of you who haven't heard me mention it for like the past 3 live streams, I think Sweetwater offers people this option. Us YouTubers, they provide me with a link to Sweetwater. But if you click on the link that I provide and buy something, Sweetwater kicks back a teeny tiny percentage to me. That's all. So, and it's on my list of things to set up, and I will keep you informed of when I do that. If you're going to go to sweetwater.com anyways, then the little percentage goes to supporting the stuff I do here. So that's all. Okay, so I think that about covers it. I am scrolling up here to see if there are any questions I missed. Hey, Tommy, Tommy has a question. Yeah, great question. This whole down-up picking thing, why is it emphasized so much? Is it for speed or tone or what? Excellent question. People like me talk about down-up picking or alternate picking incessantly, obsessively, constantly. So all of the above. First of all, 100%, it not only helps you become a faster guitar player, it is how you become a faster guitar player. That's the secret. How do you get to be a fast guitar player? You work on your down-up picking. And when I say you do it at all costs, that means, let's say you're practicing a scale, like I will demonstrate here. Regardless of which string you're jumping to, which fret you're on, if you just did a downstroke, the next stroke has to be an upstroke. There's no negotiating. There's no like, well, I feel like doing 2 downs in a row. Or part of my brain thinks it might be logical to do 2 downs in a row. No. Down, up, 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 down, up. You train yourself to do that automatically, and scales are a great vehicle for doing that. Okay, so yes, speed, 100% speed. Also, though, and this is super significant, you mentioned tone. I'm going to take that word tone and I'm going to twist it a little bit. There's tone like, hey, when I pluck the guitar way down here by the bridge, the tone is kind of twangy. Right? Because I was plucking way down here by the bridge. If I were to play the same thing with my picking hand way up by, I'm going to move my picking hand up where I'm practically picking above the fretboard, above, I don't know, the 17th, 18th, 19th fret. Listen to the difference. Here's the first way, second way. Hopefully that's coming through the mic here. Okay, so now I'm going to take the word tone that you used and I'm going to twist it. I'm going to say that the down ups are super significant because downstrokes, thanks to gravity, I'm assuming, tend to be a little bit louder. I'm not saying it's not possible to be totally equal, but on a level playing ground, just plucking down, up, down, up, down, up, the downstrokes tend to be a little bit louder. Upstrokes tend to be a little bit softer in general. Okay, so why is that significant? You want to be super conscientious about downs and ups in general, because choosing when to do a downstroke and when to do an upstroke, say during a guitar riff or something, it helps establish where the beat of the song is. And I'm trying to think. I'll use that little Johnny Cash riff as an example. That little hammer on, for the record, that's my D string, the 4th string, D string. I'm hammering on from 0 to 1. Okay, it's extremely important that those are done with downstrokes so they sound strong and confident. But there are 3 notes that lead up to that. Hear those 3 notes? That's the 5th string, 2nd fret, A string, 2nd fret. Okay, I know where I want to end up. I want to end up with a downstroke. Because the 3 notes prior to that are quick and lead directly into that hammer-on downstroke, I'm going to choose to begin with an upstroke, because mathematically that will make sure that will guarantee that I arrive right here with a downstroke. And again, this is why alternate picking is an important thing to practice, because in general it makes you especially aware of what your hand is doing. So up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. The goal is to be as smooth as possible and also play the downbeats of a song with the downstroke. That's the best way I can put it at the moment. So I have to begin this with an upstroke, up, down, up, because I have to do this with a downstroke. Now, I'm not saying this is hard. It's not hard at all, but I do it without even thinking about it because of all the practicing I've done. You know, I know I want to say without thinking about it, I know intuitively how I want my ups and downs to go. No, I'm not talking about scales anymore. I'm talking about like specific guitar riffs, like cute little things like that. Because I've spent so much time in general doing down, up, down, up, down, up picking that my hand is ready to do whatever I ask it to do. I guess that's a good way to put it. You want your hand to be right there, not asking any questions, doesn't have an opinion of its own. If your brain says up, your hand goes up, So that's the other reason to practice down, up picking, to train your hand to be ready for anything. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, let me see here. RW, you notice a new logo? Is that me? Are you asking me a question? A rainbow logo? I don't know. Oh, the song bike logo, those guitar necks. Yeah, I found that. That was like clip art I found somewhere a long time ago. I just thought it was cool. Rainbows are awesome. Guitars are awesome. It's kind of memorable. Okay. Hey, Steve from Hilltown. Okay. Everybody, it's getting towards that moment. So I'm looking for the last few questions. Wayne says, how do I tune my new 12-string Taylor? My tuner, that's a peg on my neck, doesn't do anything. Wayne, first of all, congratulations. New guitar day, NGD. Congratulations. Even if it wasn't exactly today that you got it, congratulations. Your I want to answer your question. Your tuner, even if your tuner was built for only use with a 6-string guitar, your tuner should still have a reaction to your 12-string guitar. So assuming the battery, I'm assuming that it turns on and that it is, when you play a note, at least on some of the strings, your tuner has a reaction for that note. So the short answer is the strings on your 12-string guitar that are tuned exactly like they would be on a 6-string guitar, you should be able to tune those 6 up using any electronic guitar tuner or tuner app. In terms of the other strings, well, the skinniest strings on a 12-string are tuned in unison. That means you should have 2 skinny E strings that are both tuned. They both should sound exactly like that. And same thing with the B string. So you should be able to, of the 12 strings, those 4, the 2 skinny E's and the 2 B's, you should be all set with those. If memory serves me right, the other 4 strings, what you have are octaves. So you should be able to tune, say, your fat E the same way you always would. And one solution, there's going to be many solutions. One solution is by ear. By ear, the other string, the 1 octave higher string with the 6th string, let's call it the high E. That's not the ideal name for it. The other string, the other 6th string, you could make an effort to tune that to exactly be 1 octave higher than it's called the normal 6th string. Okay, that's one option. You could get an app that you might have to pay for it. Guitar Tuna, T-U-N-A. I'm going to put that in the chat. It's such a popular app. I use the free version all the time myself. It's possible that the paid version, the not free version of Guitar Tuna, I wouldn't be surprised if they have a setting for 12 strings. Okay. Yeah, harmonic and guitar progress talking about bending strings on electric guitar, sure, or bending on acoustic guitar. Sure, remind me though, okay, remind me. Harry said, yes, Harry, you're asking about this live stream. Harry, this live stream is just about every Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So the first Saturday in August, which I believe is the 5th, I'm on vacation. I'm not planning. I'm planning on skipping that week. But stay tuned. But I probably will skip that week. But next week, come on back next week, okay? And don't forget, follow me on Instagram or Facebook, and then you will be in the know. And just go to Instagram or Facebook, and type in the phrase Songbike, all one word, SONGBIKE, and you should be able to find me pretty easily there. Okay, my friends, I believe I have answered all your questions. I will timestamp this video. It takes me a few days. Sunday is family time, and Monday is back at the grind. So I get to the timestamping as quickly as I can, but it could be. Now you can come back and watch this video soon. I mean, almost immediately. But if you are hoping for the timestamping information in the description where you can skip ahead and get right back to my baseball metaphor or a certain book recommendation or whatever, give me a couple of days. I essentially watch this again in real time, and it takes a few hours, But then I also get to read all your chats, especially the chatting amongst yourselves, which is always entertaining. Okay, so everybody, I think I got all your questions, which I am grateful for. I look forward to this on Saturdays. Very fun. Me and my crayon grape. So, as I say goodbye, I want to thank John, our moderator. You know him as Beginner Guitar. I want to thank you for giving me a job. It's true. I appreciate it. I want to... We did not talk about circle of fifths this week. That's okay. If we got to it, I was planning on just doing kind of a review, like a step back to the basics of the circle of fifths, because it's always good to re-grab and hear things that you either totally already know, then you can feel all smug and like, I got that. Or that made sense at the time, but then adulting came in and it started drifting out of your mind because you got busy doing important stuff. And I love, and I'm happy to review the basics. So, okay, everybody, I'm going to say good night. I hope you all have a chance to play your instrument unplugged or plugged. I hope you get a chance to play outside, on a porch, on a deck, in a park. Everything's better outside, right? And I think that's going to do it for me. Okay, folks, see you same time next Saturday. We had dozens and dozens of people during the chat. I see 43 likes. If you have not given the live chat a thumbs up, I would appreciate it. Please tell a friend. I have this fantasy, this goal, not a fantasy, of getting to the point where we have 100 listeners at any given time, 100 listeners, viewers. So we're getting there little by little, but tell a friend, share this live stream, share that, let people know about it on social media or whatever. I appreciate it. It'd be fun to get a lot more people involved. That means more questions. That means more information for you, right? Because as you see from this stuff, there are, everyone is coming from a different place, and there's lots of, we all learn from each other, and it makes me a better teacher because I see what's on your mind, So, okay, my friends, thanks again for watching. Hi to my mom and dad who usually watch. My mom had her birthday last Saturday, and a lot of you sent her birthday wishes, which I am grateful for. Thank you. All right, you guys, take care. Play your guitars. I will see you next Saturday, and I'm going to click on the end stream, and I know it goes on for a couple of seconds after I click on it. That's okay. All right, you guys, I'll see you later.